Hi, my name is Shinko. Welcome to my channel. We have been attempting to escape the horrors of real life with the Warriors Fire and Ice. It's the second book in the series. If you're new, I suggest, hey, you can check out the first book. I have previous videos of me reading that. It's a story about cats living in the wild in their own clan ways with rules and stuff. It's a very, if you're bored and you just want something to dive into, like a new series, this is a good one. There's well over 20 books in this series. So we are in the middle of the second book, Fire and Ice. We left off a little earlier than I normally would have. We're at chapter 16. I apologize. Yesterday there was something scheduled, but I still wanted to get this out. So I'm making this up to you today in this video. I'm going to read for longer than I normally. I'm going to read 3 chapters. So we left off with, we are starting to see the consequences and the actions of Graystripe leaving the camp to see Silverstream and not really focusing on his own health. That is now actively starting to endanger the other cats in his clan, Thunder Clan. But of course, Fireheart isn't innocent either. Fireheart's loyalties are just as divided with Graystripe's, because Fireheart's visiting his own kitty pet sister. He could be spending that time training his apprentice. He could be spending that time hunting. But instead, he chooses what time he has that he could serve the clan to go see a kitty pet, his sister. Now, obviously, yes, we're humans, and that sounds like, well, he's just seeing his sister. That's not a big deal. They're cats. I reiterate, they're cats. So let's get started. The rain continued through the night and into the next morning, but by sunhigh, the clouds began to clear. A somber air hung over the clearing as the clan waited for the news of their leader. Fireheart crept out from the patch of brambles by the boundary wall where he'd sheltered since dawn. He padded over to Blue Star's den and the side of High Rock. There was no sound from inside. As he turned away, he ran into Willowpet carrying food to the nursery. She tipped her head questioningly to one side. Fireheart knew she was hoping for news of Blue Star. Nothing to report, I'm afraid. He shrugged. Fireheart had given Cinderpaw and Brackenpaw a day's rest from training. He could see them now, lounging outside their den, looking bored. Fireheart knew he had let them down, but he wanted to stay in camp while Blue Star was sick. At least Tigerclaw wasn't here to criticize his decision. The great deputy had taken up the dawn patrol. Suddenly, the lichen of Blue Star's den twitched, and Frostfur burst through. She raced across the clearing to Yellowfang's den, and reappeared within moments, with the medicine cat behind her. Fireheart bounded over to Blue Star's den just as Frostfur and Yellowfang pushed through the hanging lichen. He stopped outside and sat down, his heart racing. Frostfur peered out. "What's wrong?" Fireheart asked, his voice trembling. Frostfur closed her eyes. "She has green cough," she told him bleakly. "Stand watch and make sure no one comes inside." She ducked back inside. Fireheart sat motionless. A shock flooded through him. Green cough! Blue Star really was in danger of losing another life. A sharp yowl outside the camp made him turn and look towards the gorse tunnel. Dustpaw exploded into the clearing and skidded to a halt beside Fireheart. "I've come from Tigerclaw," he panted. "I have a message for Blue Star." "She's sick," Fireheart replied. "You can't go in." Dustpaw flicked his tail impatiently. "Tigerclaw needs to see her at the Thunder Path. It's very urgent." "What's wrong?" Dustpaw glared at him. "Tigerclaw asked for Blue Star," he sneered. "Not some kitty pet pretending to be a warrior." Fury shot through Fireheart, and he unsheathed his claws. Blue Star can't leave the camp, he growled. He flattened his ears and moved so that he blocked the entrance to his leader's den. Fireheart is right! Yellowfang's rough meow sounded behind him. She had come out of Blue Star's den. Dustpaw looked at the medicine cat, shrinking beneath her orange gaze. Tiger Claw has found evidence of Shadow Clan warriors in our territory, he meowed. They've invaded our hunting grounds! In spite of his fear for Blue Star, Fireheart felt his lip curl in anger. How dare they? After what ThunderClan has done for them? But Yellowfang wasn't interested in Dustpaw's report. She turned to Fireheart, her eyes filled with urgency. Fireheart, she meowed. Tell me, do you know whether there is any catnip in Two Leg Place? Catnip? Fireheart echoed. I need it for Blue Star, Yellowfang explained. It's an herb I haven't used for moons, but I think it will help her. The medicine cat had Fireheart's full attention now. She continued, It has soft leaves and an irresistible scent. Fireheart interrupted her. Yes, I know where to find some. He had never seen it in the woods, but as a kid, he had rolled in a patch in his two-leg home. Good, replied Yellowfang. I need as much as you can carry, and fast. What about Tiger Claw? Demanded Dustpaw. Tiger Claw will have to deal with it on his own for a moment, Yellowfang snapped. Cinderpaw had been watching them from the tree stump. She bounded up. Deal with what himself? She meowed excitedly. Fireheart signaled her to be quiet with an urgent flick of his tail. Dustpaw ignored the apprentice. Shadow Clan could be in our territory by now, he hissed. Cinderpaw's eyes widened, but she held her tongue. Yellowfang paused to think. Where's Whitestorm? She asked. Patrolling Sunny Wrecks with Sandpaw and Mousefur, Dustpaw answered. Yellowfang nodded. With Blue Star's sake and Fireheart fetching catnip, we can't risk sending any more warriors out of the camp. If Shadow Clan is in our territory, they might attack here. They've done it before, she reminded him grimly. If I'm quick getting the catnip, Fireheart put in, I could meet Tiger Claw afterward to bring back his message for Blue Star. Dustpaw's eyes flashed. But he wants Blue Star to see the evidence for herself. Shadow Clan has left the remains of fresh kill on our side of the Thunder Path. Yellowfang silenced him with a growl. Blue Star doesn't need to see the evidence, she rasped. The word of her deputy ought to be enough. Tiger Clan just needs to be told that Blue Star can't come, meowed Fireheart. I'll take the message to him after I fetch the catnip. Where is he? I'll go, Dustpaw spat. Do you think you're a better messenger than me because you're a warrior and I'm just an apprentice? He threw Fireheart a look of pure hatred. But Yellowfang had no time for quarrels. The clan will need protecting while Fireheart is gone, she hissed at Dustpaw, flattening her ears. Isn't that duty important enough for you? Now, where is Tiger Claw? Beside the burned ash tree that overhangs the Thunder Path, Dustpaw replied sulkily. Right, Yellowfang growled. Go now, Fireheart. Quickly! As Fireheart sped away across the clearing, he heard small paw steps sprinting after him. Fireheart, wait! Go back to your den, Cinderpaw, he meowed over his shoulder without slowing down. But I could go and give Tiger Claw the message while you get the catnip. Fireheart stopped in his tracks and turned to face his young apprentice. Cinderpaw, if there are any Shadow Clan warriors around, you need to stay in camp. Cinderpaw looked crushed, but Fireheart didn't have time to worry about her feelings. Go back to your den, he growled. Without waiting to see her reaction, he turned and charged out of the camp. He raced through tall pines and wove quickly through the undergrowth that backed onto Two Lake Place. As he scrambled onto the fence that bordered his old home, the familiar smell of the garden filled his nostrils. Memories flooded his mind, making him dizzy for a moment. He thought of sunny afternoons, playing in the garden with the toys his two legs held for him. He almost expected to hear them rattling his dinner and calling his kitty pet name. Then he thought of Blue Star, fighting against Greencloth. Fireheart leaped down into the garden and bounded across the lawn to the place where he remembered the catnip had grown. He inhaled deeply, his mouth open, and breathed out with relief. The enticing scent was still here somewhere. Fireheart padded along the row of plants, sniffing the air. He couldn't see the catnip, and all the time he was getting nearer and nearer to his old two-leg nest, Fireheart's steps grew slower. Sense of his kithood mingled with the catnip, now confusing him. Fireheart shook his head to clear it and concentrated on the catnip scent. He pushed his way under a large bush, still dripping from the overnight rain, and found a large patch of the soft, fragrant herb. The scent frost had killed some of the leaves, but the sheltering bush had protected enough for Yellowfang to use. Fireheart bit off as many leaves as he could carry. Their flavors seeped deliciously into his mouth, but he was careful not to chew. Much as he wanted to, Blue Star would need every drop of their precious juice. With his jaws full, he turned and raced back up the garden. He leaped over the fence and pelted back through the forest, ignoring the brambles that dragged at his coat. He felt as if his lungs would burst. With his jaws closed to hold the herbs, he could breathe only through his nose. Yellowfang was waiting for him in the gorse tunnel. Fireheart dropped the catnip at her paws and took a long gulp of air, his sides heaving. With a grateful look, Yellowfang picked up the leaves and rushed away towards Blue Star's den. As he sat gasping for air, Fireheart realized he could smell Cinderpaw's excited scent in the gorse tunnel. He sniffed the gorse around him. Had Cinderpaw left the camp even after he warned her about the Shadow Clan warriors? Fireheart dashed to the apprentice's den and stuck his head inside. Brackenpaw was alone, sleeping. "Where's Cinderpaw?" Fireheart meowed. Brackenpaw lifted his head sleepily. "What?" "Cinderpaw, where is she?" "Don't know," answered Brackenpaw, confused. Fireheart withdrew his head and looked around the clearing. Frostfur was pacing outside Blue Star's den, her coat ruffled with agitation. Fireheart wondered what to do. He didn't have time to find Cinderpaw himself, and he didn't want to tell the other warriors that she was missing. Graystripe! He thought suddenly. Graystripe could look for her while he went to find Tiger Claw. Fireheart hurried to the warrior's den and slipped inside. Graystripe's nest was empty. A flash of anger shot through Fireheart. Where was his friend when he needed him? As if he couldn't guess. Fireheart snorted crossly. Cinderpaw would have to fend for herself until he found Tiger Claw and told him Blue Star was sick. Fireheart raced back through the gorse tunnel and began their journey to the Thunder Path. As he followed the trail up the side of the ravine and into the woods, he was aware that Cinderpaw's scent hung in the air. She might have come this way. Of course! She had gone to meet Tiger Claw herself. The fur on Fireheart's spine prickled with worry and frustration. How could she be so foolish? As he skirted Snake Rocks, Fireheart began to smell the Thunder Path and hear the roar of its monsters. Suddenly, a shrill, high-pitched squeal sounded from the edge of the trees. Fireheart felt the blood run cold in his veins. It was the same cry he had heard in his dream. He raced out of the trees. It skidded to a halt on the grass border beside the Thunder Path. He looked desperately up and down the verge and spotted an ash tree, charred by lightning. That must be the place where Dustpaw had said Tiger Claw wanted to meet Blue Star. But the deputy was still some way in the distance, padding calmly towards the ash. Fireheart broke into a run. The verge was very narrow here, with scarcely room for a rabbit, but Fireheart kept going. He called out to Tiger Claw as he ran. "Did you hear the cry?" But the roar of an approaching monster drowned out his words. Fireheart shuddered as it passed, waiting for the noise to die away so he could call out to Tiger Claw. Then he noticed something beside the ash, a dark shape on the thin strip of grass. With a sickening jolt, he recognized the small body lying motionless beside the Thunder Path. It was Cinderpaw. Chapter 17. Fireheart stared in horror. Ahead of him, Tiger Claw had reached the limp body and stood looking down at it, his massive shoulders rigid with shock. Fireheart forced himself nearer. Tentatively, he stretched his head forward and sniffed Cinderpaw's flank. She smelled of the thunder path. One of her hind legs was twisted and glistening with blood. Fireheart was trembling so much he could hardly stand. But then he saw her sides moving. She was still breathing. Speechless with relief, he looked up at Tiger Claw. "She's alive," the deputy growled. He fixed his amber stare on Fireheart. "What was she doing here?" "She came to find you," Fireheart whispered. "You mean you sent her here?" Fireheart's eyes widened with surprise. Did Tiger Claw think he'd be so stupid? "I told her to stay in the camp," he protested. "She came by herself." "Because I couldn't make her listen to me," he realized with dismay. Tiger Claw snorted. "We must get her home." He bent down with his mouth open, reaching for the small, crumbled body, but Fireheart dipped his head and picked up the apprentice by the scruff of her neck before Tiger Claw could touch her. He began to drag Cinderpaw into the woods as gently as he could, her body hanging limply between his front paws. Darkstripe came bounding up to them. "Upchuck snake rocks again, Tiger Claw. There's no sign of Shadow." He broke off when he saw Cinderpaw dangling from Fireheart's mouth. "What happened?" Fireheart didn't wait to hear Tiger Claw's answer. He stumbled away through the trees with his precious burden. He could have prevented this accident. If only he'd made Cinderpaw listen to him. If he'd been a better mentor. Now, her body was damaged and bleeding, and she made no sound as she dangled from his jaws. Her hind paws scored a shallow trail through the leaves as carefully Fireheart carried her home. Yellowfang was not in her clearing. The two kids with White Claw were curled together in their shelter, fast asleep. Fireheart laid Cinderpaw on the cold ground, then made a nest for her in the bracken by circling around and around. When he had finished, he grabbed Cinderpaw's scruff and gently pulled her inside. "Fireheart!" Yellowfang meowed from the clearing. Tiger Claw must have told her about Cinderpaw. Fireheart hopped out of the nest. "She's in here," he croaked, feeling weak with relief at seeing the medicine cap. "Let me look," Yellowfang ordered. She brushed past Fireheart and climbed into the bracken to examine Cinderpaw. Fireheart sat down and waited. At last, Yellowfang jumped out. "She's hurt very badly," she meowed, her eyes dark with concern. "But I think I might be able to save her." There was a tiny hope, like a single sparkling dewdrop clinging to his pelt. Fireheart felt it glisten for a moment before Yellowfang went on. "I can't promise anything." She looked deep into Fireheart's eyes and murmured, "Bluestar is very sick and I can do no more for her. StarCrown must decide her fate now." Fireheart felt his eyes cloud with emotion. He could hardly see Yellowfang's face, but he heard her speak to him again, her voice gentle. "Go and sit with Bluestar," she meowed. "She was asking for you earlier. I will take care of Cinderpaw." Fireheart nodded blindly and turned away. Bluestar had been his mentor, and more than that, there had been a bond between them since their first meeting. But he felt torn. He should be with Cinderpaw, too. A shadow loomed at the far end of the fern tunnel. Tiger Claw was sitting at the entrance to Yellowfang's den, his head held high, as usual. Fireheart's shoulders stiffened with anger. Why couldn't the great warrior show some sign of sorrow? After all, Cinderpaw had come looking for him. And for what? There hadn't been any evidence of Shadow Crown fresh kill that Fireheart had noticed. He walked past Tiger Claw without a word, and headed across the clearing toward Bluestar's den. Longtail was sitting on guard outside. He glanced sideways, but he didn't try to stop Fireheart as the young warrior pushed through the lichen. Goldenflower, one of the queens, was inside. Fireheart could see her eyes shining in the gloom, and the pale fur of Bluestar lying curled in her nest. Goldenflower leaned forward and gently licked Bluestar's head to cool it, like a mother nursing her kit. Fireheart's heart ached as he thought of Cinderpaw. Would Frostfur be at her daughter's side by now? Yellowfang has given her catnip and feverfew, Goldenflower murmured to Fireheart. We can only watch and wait now. She got to her paws and touched Fireheart's nose with her muzzle. Will you be okay to sit with her? She asked gently. Fireheart nodded, and Goldenflower padded softly out of the den. Fireheart lowered himself onto his belly, stretching his forepaws in front of him so that they just touched his leader's face. He lay very still, his eyes fixed on Bluestar's limp body. She didn't even have the strength to cough now. Fireheart could hear her breathing in the darkness, shallow and rasping. He listened to the faltering rhythm as the night slowly passed. Her breathing stopped just before dawn. Fireheart had almost dozed off when he realized the cave was silent. There was no noise from the camp outside either, just a deathly hush, as if the whole clan was holding its breath. Bluestar was completely still. Fireheart knew she was with StarClan, preparing for her remaining last life. He had watched Bluestar lose a life before. He felt his fur prickle at the eerie peace that seemed to enfold her body, but there was nothing he could do, so he waited. Suddenly, Bluestar gasped. Fireheart! Is that you? She meowed in a croaky voice. Yes, Bluestar, Fireheart murmured. I'm here. I have lost another life. Bluestar's voice was weak, but the relief made Fireheart want to reach forward and lick her between the ears, as Goldenflower had done. When I lose this one, I will not be able to return. Fireheart swallowed hard. The thought of the clan losing its great leader pained him, but the thought of losing his mentor and friend hurt him even more. How do you feel? Shall I fetch Yellowfang? Bluestar shook her head slowly. The fever is gone. I am well enough. I just need to rest. Very well, meowed Fireheart. Light was beginning to filter through the lichen, and his head swam from his wakeful night. You must be tired, meowed Bluestar. Go and get some sleep. Yes. Fireheart heaved himself up. His legs felt stiff from lying so long. Is there anything you need? No. Just tell Yellowfang what has happened, answered Bluestar. Thank you for sitting with me. Fireheart tried to purr, but it caught in his throat. There would be time for more words later. He pushed his way up through the lichen. Outside, a harsh brightness made him blink. It had snowed. In the night, Fireheart stared in amazement. He had never seen snow before. His two-leg owners had kept him shut inside when he was a very young kid whenever it was cold. But he heard the clan elders talk of it. He nodded to Darkstripe, who had replaced Longtail's garden. Bluestar stood and stepped out into the strange powder. It felt wet and cold, crunching loudly under his paws. Tigerclaw was standing in the clearing. It was still snowing, and the flakes settled on the tabby's thick fur without melting. Fireheart could hear him giving orders for the nursery wall to be padded with leaves to keep out the cold. Then I want a hole to be scraped out where we can store prey, the ThunderClan deputy instructed. Use snow to line it, and cover it with more snow once it's been filled. We might as well make use of the snow while it's here. Warriors raced around Tigerclaw, following his orders. Nelsfur, Longtail, organize some hunting parties. We need as much fresh kill as we can get before the prey takes to the burrows for good. Tigerclaw spotted Fireheart padding across the clearing. Fireheart, wait, he called. Oh, I suppose you'll have to rest. I can't imagine you'll be any use on a hunting party this morning. Fireheart stared at the Dark Warrior, hostility rising like fire in his throat. I'm going to see how Cinderpaw is first, he growled. Tigerclaw held his gaze for a moment. How's Bluestar? Mistrust ruffled Fireheart's fur like a cold breeze. He'd heard Bluestar lie to Tigerclaw once before about how many lives she had left. I'm no medicine cat, he answered. I can't say. Tigerclaw snorted impatiently, then turned away and went back to giving orders. Fireheart walked over to Yellowfang's den, relieved to escape the frantic bustle of the camp. His heart began to pound as he wondered what state he would find Cinderpaw in. "Yellowfang," he called. "Hush!" Yellowfang sprang from Cinderpaw's bracken nest. "She's sleeping at last. She's had a hard night. I couldn't give her poppy seeds to ease the pain until she recovered from the shock." "But she's going to live?" Fireheart's legs felt wobbly with relief. "I can't be for sure for a few days. She's hurt inside, and one of her hind legs is badly broken." "But it will mend, won't it?" Fireheart pleaded desperately. "She'll be training again by New Leaf?" Yellowfang shook her head, her yellow eyes sympathetic. "Fireheart, whatever happens, Cinderpaw will never be a warrior now." Fireheart's head spun. He was dizzy with lack of sleep, and this devastating news sapped the last of his energy. Cinderpaw had been entrusted to him for her warrior training. Memories of the naming ceremony pricked like cruel thorns. Cinderpaw's excitement, Frostfur's motherly pride. "Does Frostfur know?" he meowed, feeling hollow. "Yes, she was here till dawn. She's back in the nursery now. There are other kits to tend to." "I'll ask one of the elders to sit with Cinderpaw. She needs to be kept warm." "I could do that." Fireheart pattered over to the nest where Cinderpaw was sleeping and looked inside. She squirmed, and her blood-smeared sides heaved, as though she were fighting a battle in her sleep. Yellowfang gently nudged Fireheart with her nose. "You need to get some sleep," she rasped. "Leave Cinderpaw to me." Fireheart stared where he was. "Who's try last another life?" he burst out. Yellowfang blinked for a moment, then lifted her head to StarClan. She didn't utter a word, but Fireheart could see the anguish in her orange eyes. "You know, don't you?" he murmured. Yellowfang lowered her chin and gazed into his eyes. "That this is Bluestar's final life? Yes, I know. A medicine cat can tell these things." "Will the rest of the clan be able to tell as well?" Fireheart asked, thinking of Tigerclaw. Yellowfang narrowed her eyes. "No. She will be no weaker in this life than she was in any of her others." Fireheart blinked gratefully at her. "Now," Yellowfang ordered, "do you want some poppy seeds to help you sleep?" Fireheart shook his head. Part of him longed for the deep, easy sleep they would bring. But if Tigerclaw was right, and ShadowClan really was about to attack ThunderClan's borders, he did not want to dull his senses. He might be needed to defend the camp. Graystripe was back in the warrior's den. Fireheart did not speak to him. His rage at finding him missing the night before lingered like a dull bruise. He padded silently to his nest, circled once, and settled down to wash. Graystripe looked at... "You're back, then?" He sounded edgy, as if he wanted to say more. Fireheart stopped, licking his forepaws, and stared at Graystripe. "You tried to warn Silverstream off," Graystripe hissed furiously. Willowpup, who was dozing on the other side of the den, opened one eye, then closed it again. Graystripe lowered his voice. "Stay out of it, will you?" he spat. "I'm going to keep on seeing her, whatever you do or say." Fireheart snorted and flashed a resentful glance at his friend. His talk with Silverstream seemed so long ago, he'd almost forgotten it. But he hadn't forgotten that Graystripe had been missing when he needed his help finding Cinderpaw. He laid his head angrily on his muddy forepaws and closed his eyes. Cinderpaw was battling against her injuries, and Bluestar was on her 9th life. As far as Fireheart was concerned, Graystripe could do whatever the heck he liked. Chapter 18. Graystripe had already left his nest when Fireheart awoke the next day. He could tell it was sun high by the light that glowed through the branches. He rose, his body still weary with grief, and pushed his head out of the den. Snow must have been falling all morning, for it lay thick on the ground and had drifted against the den. Fireheart found himself gazing out over a white wall that was as high as his shoulder. The usual bustle of the camp seemed muted. Fireheart could see Willowpet and Hoptail whispering on the far side of the clearing. Masfer was picking her way laboriously towards the store of fresh kale, a rabbit dangling from her jaws. She stopped and sneezed, then carried on. Fireheart lifted one paw and rested it on top of the snow. It felt hard at first, but when he pressed down, the thin covering of ice cracked and he gasped as his leg plunged into the drift. Fireheart snorted as he found himself up to his muzzle in snow now. Shaking his head and lifting his chin, he leaped forward, only to sink even more deeper snow. He struggled, an alarm rising in his chest. He felt as he was drowning in snow now. Then all of a sudden, there was solid ground under his paws. He had reached the edge of the clearing. The snow here was only a mouse length deep, and Fireheart sat down with a soft crunch, relieved. He tensed when he saw Graystripe plowing through the snow towards him. The Grey Warrior seemed unbothered by it, protected from its damp chill by his thick pelt. His face was shadowed with sorrow. "Have you heard about Blue Star?" he asked as he neared. "She lost her life to Green Cough." Fireheart flicked his ears impatiently. He could have told his friend that last night. "I know," he snapped. "I was with her." "Why didn't you tell me?" meowed Graystripe, shocked. "You weren't exactly in a friendly mood last night, if you remember. Anyway, if you weren't always off breaking the warrior code, you might know what was going on in your own clan," he snarled. Graystripe's ears twitched uncomfortably. "I'd just seen Cinderpaw," he meowed. "I'm sorry she's so sick." "How is she?" "She looked bad, but Yellowfang said she's pulling through," replied Graystripe. Fireheart stared anxiously across the clearing and stood up. He wanted to see his apprentice for himself. Graystripe meowed. "She's asleep now, Frostfur's with her, and Yellowfang doesn't want anyone else disturbing her." Fireheart flinched involuntarily. How was he going to tell Frostfur that it was his fault that Cinderpaw went to the Thunderpath? Instinctively, Fireheart turned to Graystripe, seeking reassurance. But Graystripe was trudging across the snowy clearing towards the nursery. "Off to see Silverstream," Fireheart guessed resentfully, sheathing and unsheathing his claws as he watched his friend disappear from sight. Fireheart noticed Speckletail, the oldest queen from the nursery and the mother of the kit with White Cough, only when she stopped right in front of him. "Is Tigerclaw inside?" she asked, pointing with her nose to the warrior's den. Fireheart shook his head. Speckletail meowed. "There's Green Cough in the nursery. 2 of Brindlebeast's kids are sick." "Green Cough?" Fireheart gasped, shaken from his anger. "Will they die?" "They might, but Leaf Bear always brings Green Cough," Speckletail pointed out gently. "Surely there's something we could do," Fireheart protested. "Yellowfang will do what she can," answered Speckletail. "But in the end, it's usually up to StarClan." A new flash of fury flared in Fireheart's belly as Speckletail turned away and padded back to the nursery. How could the clan tolerate these tragedies? He felt overwhelmed by the need to leave the camp, to escape the gloomy air that the rest of the clan seemed content to breathe. He jumped up and raced blindly across the snowy clearing through the gorse tunnel and out into the forest. He was startled to find himself heading instinctively for the training hollow. The thought that he should be there, teaching Cinderpaw, was more than he could bear, as he veered to avoid it. He heard the voices of Whitestorm and Brackenpaw. The white-furred warrior must have taken Brackenpaw for training while Fireheart had been sleeping. Had no cat stopped to grieve for Blue Star's lost life? Fireheart's throat tightened as he fought back his rage and ran on, desperate to put as much distance as possible between himself and the camp. He finally stopped beneath tall pines, his sides heaving with the effort of running through the snow. There was stillness here that calmed him. Even the birds had stopped singing. Fireheart felt as if he were the only creature in the world. He didn't know where he was going. He just padded on, letting the woods soothe him. As he walked, his mind cleared. He could do nothing for Cinderpaw, and Graystripe was out of reach, but he might be able to help Yellowfang fight Green Cough. He would fetch some more catnip. Fireheart turned his steps towards his old kitty pet home, weaving through the brambles and the oak woods that backed onto Two Lake Place. He leaped to the top of the fence at the end of his old home, nudging a ridge of snow into the garden below. It fell with a soft clump. Fireheart peered down into the garden. He could see tracks smaller than a cat's. A squirrel had been out hunting for its store of nuts. It didn't take Fireheart long to pluck a generous mouthful of leaves from the catnip bush. He wanted to take as much as he could. Its soft leaves might not survive this winter. This could be his last chance to gather it. With his mouth crammed, Fireheart stared towards the swinging flap he had used as a kid. He wondered if his two-legged housefolk still lived there. They'd been kind to him. He had spent his first leaf bear crossette in their nest, warm and safe from the cruelties of the Thunderpaths in Greencroft. The scent of this catnip must be going to my head, he thought, sharply. He bounded up the garden and up onto the fence with a single leap. He was unnerved by how much the thought of his two-leg home had stirred him. Did he really want the safety and predictability of a kitty pet life? Of course not! Fireheart shook that thought away. But the idea of returning to camp didn't appeal to him yet. Suddenly he thought of Princess. Fireheart raced along the edge of the woods to the part of Two Lake Place where his sister's garden lay. When her fence was in sight, he ducked down through the snow and buried the catnip beneath a layer of dead leaves to protect it from the cold. He was still panting from his run when he leaped onto the fence and called out to Princess. Then he scrambled back down into the woods to wait for her. The snow made his paws ache with cold as he paced restlessly under an oak tree. Perhaps she is kidding, he told himself, or shut inside. He had just persuaded himself he wasn't going to see her today when he heard her familiar mew. He looked up to see her standing on top of her fence. Fireheart felt a shiver of anticipation. Her belly was no longer swollen. Princess must have kidded. He breathed in her scent as she approached and felt it warm him. You've kidded, he meowed. Princess gently touched his nose with hers. Yes, she meowed softly. Did it go okay? Are the kids all right? Princess purred. It was fine. I have 5 healthy kids. She meowed, her eyes glowing with pleasure. Fireheart licked her head and she meowed. I didn't expect to see you out in this weather. I came to find some catnip, Fireheart told her. There's Greencroft in the camp. Princess' eyes clouded with worry. Are many of your clan ill? 3 so far. Fireheart hesitated for a moment, then meowed sadly. Our leader lost another life last night. Another life? Echoed Princess. What do you mean? I thought it was only an old she-cat's tale that cats had 9 lives. Blue Star was granted 9 lives by StarClan because she is leader of our clan, Fireheart explained. Princess looked at him in awe. Then it is true. Only for clan leaders. The rest of us have only 1 life. Like you. Like Cinderpaw. Fireheart's voice trailed away. Cinderpaw? Princess must have detected the grief in his voice. Fireheart gazed into her eyes, and the thoughts that had been troubling him began to tumble out. My apprentice, he meowed. She was hit on the Thunderpath last night. His voice cracked as he remembered finding a broken, bleeding body. She's badly hurt. She might still die. And even if she survives, she'll never become a warrior. Princess moved closer and nuzzled him. You spoke so fondly of her last time you were here, she mewed. She sounded full and fun of energy. The accident shouldn't have happened, Fireheart growled. I was supposed to meet Tiger Claw. He asked for Blue Star, but Blue Star was ill, so I offered to go instead. I had to fetch catnip first, so Cinderpaw went in my place. Princess looked alarmed, and Fireheart added quickly, I told her not to, but perhaps if I had been a better mentor, she'd have listened to me. I'm sure you're a good mentor, Princess tried to soothe him, but Fireheart hardly heard her. I don't know why Tiger Claw wanted Blue Star to meet him in such a dangerous place, he spat. He said there was evidence that Shadow Clan invaded our territory, but when I arrived, there was no scent of them at all. Was it a trap? Princess suggested. Fireheart looked into his sister's questioning eyes, and suddenly began to wonder. Why would Tiger Claw want to hurt Cinderpaw? It was Blue Star he asked for, Princess pointed out. Fireheart's fur bristled. Could his sister be right? Tiger Claw had summoned Blue Star to the narrowest part of the Thunderpath verge. Suddenly, surely even Tiger Claw wouldn't deliberately put his clan leader in danger. Fireheart shook the thought away. I don't know, he stammered. Everything's so confusing at the moment. Even Greenstrip's hardly speaking to me. Why? Fireheart shrugged. It's too complicated to explain. Princess nestled next to him in the snow, pressing her soft fur against his. I just feel like such an outsider at the moment, Fireheart went on gloomily. It's not easy being different. Different? Princess looked puzzled. Being born a kitty pet when the other cats are all clan-born. You seem like a clan-born cat to me, meowed Princess. Fireheart blinked gratefully at her. She went on. But if you're not happy in the clan, you can always come home with me. My housefolk would look after you, I'm sure. Fireheart pictured himself living his old kitty pet life. Warm, cozy, safe. But he couldn't forget how he watched the woods from his two-leg garden and dreamed of being out in the forest. A breeze stirred his thick fur and carried the scent of a mouse to his nose. Fireheart shook his head firmly. Thank you, Princess, he meowed. But I belong with my clan now. I could never be happy in a two-leg nest. I would miss the sense of the forest and sleeping beneath Silverpelt, hunting my own food and sharing it with my clan. His sister's eyes gleamed. It sounds like a good life, she purred. She looked down shyly at her paws. Sometimes, even I stare into the forest and wonder what it feels like to live out there. Fireheart purred and stood up. Then you understand. Princess nodded. Are you going back now? Yes, I must take the catnip to Yellowfang while it's fresh. Princess stretched her head forward to press her muzzle into his side. Perhaps my kids will be strong enough to meet you next time you come, she meowed. Excitement tingled in Fireheart's belly. I hope so, he meowed. As he turned to leave, Princess called, Take care, brother. I don't want to lose you again. You won't, Fireheart promised. Good thinking, Fireheart, purred Whitestorm. He had seen Fireheart pad back into the camp with his jaws crammed with catnip. Fireheart's mouth had been watering all the way home, although he was beginning to think he'd be happy never to see another catnip bush again. But he was happier than when he had left the camp. His sister had been safely kitted, and his head felt clearer. He was heading towards Yellowfang's den when Tiger Claw appeared at his side. More catnip, observed the great tabby, his eyes suspicious. I wondered where you'd gone. Brackapaw could take that to Yellowfang. Brackapaw was helping to clear away snow nearby. Come and take this catnip to Yellowfang, Tiger Claw ordered the apprentice. Brackenpaw nodded and bounded over at once. Fireheart dropped the bunch of leaves onto the ground. I wanted to visit Cinderpaw, he meowed to Tiger Claw. Later, growled the deputy. He waited while Brackapaw picked up the catnip and carried it off to Yellowfang's den. Then he turned back to Fireheart. I want to know where Graystripe has been going. Fireheart felt the heat rising under his fur. I don't know, he replied, holding Tiger Claw's gaze. Tiger Claw stared back at him, his eyes cold and hostile. When you see him, he hissed, you can tell him he's confined to the fallen oak. Yellowfang's old den? Fireheart glanced at the tangled branches where the medicine cat had lived when she first came into the ThunderClan camp, when she was still considered a ShadowClan outcast. Swiftpaw was there, lying beside Speckletail's dark tabby kit. Cats with white cough are confined there until they are well again. But Graystripe only has a cold, Fireheart protested. A cold is bad enough. He'll stay at the fallen oak, Tiger Claw repeated. Cats with green cough are to nest with Yellowfang. We must stop this sickness from spreading. The deputy's eyes flashed unsympathetically. Fireheart wondered if he thought of illness as a sign of weakness. It is for the good of the clan, Tiger Claw added. Yes, Tigerclaw. I'll tell Graystripe. And keep away from Blue Star, the deputy warned. But the green cop has left her, Fireheart objected. I am aware of that, but her den still reeks of the sickness. I can't afford to have any of my warriors falling ill. Whitestorm tells me that RiverClan warriors have been sent even closer to the camp. He also tells me that he has to train Breckapaw today. I expect you to take charge of Breckapaw's training tomorrow. Fireheart nodded. May I go and see Cinderpaw now? Tigerclaw looked at him. I doubt if Yellowfang has put her anywhere near the cats with green cough, Fireheart added with a flash of irritation. I won't get infected. Very well, Tigerclaw agreed and stalked away. Fireheart met Breckapaw in the middle of the clearing. Yellowfang was very grateful for the catnip, Breckapaw meowed. Good, answered Fireheart. By the way, I'm teaching you how to catch birds tomorrow. I hope you're ready for a bit of tree climbing. Brackapaw's whiskers twitched excitedly. Definitely! I'll meet you at the training hollow! Fireheart nodded and carried on to Yellowfang's den. He spotted Brindleface's poor kits straight away. They lay quietly in the bracken nest, coughing, their noses and eyes streaming. Yellowfang greeted him. Thanks for the catnip. We're going to need it. Patchpal has green cough now. She gestured with her nose towards another nest in the bracken. Inside, Fireheart could see the old Tom's matted black and white fur. Oh, Cinderpaw, he asked, looking back at the medicine cat. Yellowfang sighed. She was awake earlier, but not for long. She has an infection in her leg, StarClan knows. I've tried everything, but she must fight this one herself. Fireheart peered into Cinderpaw's nest. The little gray cat was twitching in her sleep. Her injured leg twisted awkwardly to one side. Fireheart shuddered, suddenly afraid she might yet lose this struggle. He turned back to Yellowfang, looking for words of encouragement, but the medicine cat sat with her head low. She looked exhausted. Do you think Spotleaf would have been able to save these cats? She meowed unexpectedly, raising her head to meet his gaze. Fireheart shivered. He could still sense Spotleaf's presence here in the clearing. He remembered how efficiently she attended to Ravenpaw's shoulder wound after the battle with RiverClan, and how carefully she advised him about caring for Yellowfang when the old tree cat first came to ThunderClan camp. Then he looked at Yellowfang, her shoulders weighted down with experience. I'm sure there's nothing Spotleaf would have done differently, he told her. One of the kids cried out and Yellowfang sprang up. As she passed, Fireheart leaned forward and gently stroked the old cat's side with his muzzle. She twitched her shoulder gratefully at him. Then, filled with sadness, he turned and padded towards the fern tunnel. The white pup of Frostfur appeared at the other end. She must be coming to see Cinderpaw. As he approached the queen, Fireheart lifted his head and looked into her blue eyes. The sorrow in them made his heart twist with pain. Frostfur, he began. The queen stopped. I'm sorry. Fireheart trembled as he spoke. Frostfur looked confused. What for? I should have been able to stop Cinderpaw from going to the Thunder Path. Frostfur gazed at him, but her expression gave away nothing except her sadness. I don't blame you, Fireheart, she murmured. Then she lowered her head and carried on toward her kit. Graystripe was back, munching a bowl beside the nettle clump. Fireheart patted over to him. Tigerclaw says you got to move to the Fallen Oak with the white cough cats, he meowed, with a prickle of resentment. He remembered how the deputy had questioned him about his friend. That won't be necessary, replied Graystripe cheerfully. I'm better now. Yellowfang gave me the all clear this morning. Fireheart looked closely at Graystripe. His eyes were certainly bright again, and his runny nose had dried to an appealing crust. At any other time, Fireheart would have teased him about how much he looked like Running Nose, the Shadowclap medicine cat. Now, he spat crossly. Tigerclaw has noticed your disappearances. You should be more careful. Why can't you stay away from Silverstreak, at least for now? Graystripe stopped chewing and stared angrily back at Fireheart. And why can't you mind your own business? Fireheart closed his eyes and snorted with frustration. Would he ever get through to his friend? Then he wondered if he even cared anymore. After all, Graystripe hadn't asked about Cinderpaw. Fireheart's stomach growled to tell him he was hungry. He might as well eat. He took a sparrow from the fresh kill pile and carried it away to a deserted corner of the camp to eat alone. As he settled down, he thought of Princess far away into a lake place with her newborn kids. Lonely and anxious, Fireheart stared across the camp and longed to see her again. All right. I hope I made it up to you guys. So, gonna go back to bringing up a few points. Fireheart. Now, it happened earlier in the story. I'm not sure if you remember, but Fireheart did have a dream about the thundering of the thunder path and wailing. But he dismissed it as, well, bunch of clan cats have dreams of a thunder path like that, right? Yet again, Fireheart has had a dream that came true. Typically, medicine cats tend to have dreams that go with Star Clan. Now, in this series, that's not just medicine cats. It's typically a medicine cat thing. Clan leaders can also speak with Star Clan, though it's heavily relied through medicine cats. Medicine cats are able to discern signs and such from Star Clan. Clan leaders are connected in the way that, well, Star Clan can reach out to them specifically if they want, which can come in different forms. Throughout the series, you'll see all the different ways that Star Clan has reached out to different cats in different ways and for different reasons. But with that being said, that gives the notion that Star Clan is powerful. The reality is, Star Clan can only do so much in some situations. And that will be a theme that comes up as well. Star Clan, you'll actually run into some cats that have a hard time coming to accept Star Clan, have a hard time comprehending it. Understandably, if you apply this to any religion these days, let's say Christianity, for example, that's hard to comprehend for some people. Or Muslim, that's hard to comprehend for some people too. It's just like any religion. So with that being said, that dream definitely came true. So it looks like Gray Stripe, I don't know, do you think Gray Stripe's loyal to Thunder Clan at this point? Now, Fireheart, his loyalties are divided, but when it has come down to it so far, he has shown that he's put the clan first. Gray Stripe's not really doing that, unfortunately, is he? Either way, so Blue Star did lose another life. She's on her last one. Now, it will be as Yellow Fang says, she's gonna act just as fine. She's gonna be just as strong as ever. What do you think about Tiger Claw and Cinderpaw on the Thunder Path? Cinderpaw getting hurt. Do you think she's gonna survive? Also, where was that evidence Tiger Claw spoke of? Why was he trying to get Blue Star out there? Is Tiger Claw a cat to be trusted? Well, I guess we'll find out later. I hope you have a wonderful day. Be safe out there in this crazy mixed up universe of ours. Bye.